and gentlemen, welcome back to another broadcast of the Weekly with me, Neff. Please subscribe to the channel and share this video with a couple of friends and colleagues. Helps out a lot. Trying to reach 1,000 subscriptions, and every subscription helps out with that goal. New subscribers, welcome to the channel, and older subscribers, thank you for continuing to support the channel and helping spread the word to help grow the community as fast as possible. Tonight, I wanted to talk a bit about Spawn. I've been thinking about Spawn lately, and I think the Predator Killer of Killers animated anthology really got me inspired just thinking about how we could bring back Spawn. I think it's overdue. Obviously, there has been talks about bringing back Spawn in a live action capacity, but overall, when it comes to the production of Spawn as a film, either live action or animated, it's been in production hell. The comics still run, but overall, when it comes to seeing Spawn on any screen, details have been in the gray. And so just for some quick background, Spawn was created by Todd McFarlane. This is the comic book artist that created the Amazing Spider-Man. The artwork, that is, for the most part, even though he did collab on writing, but he has solely made Spawn himself. He's had other collaborators come in to help him write. He has written a lot of Spawn, but Spawn, I believe, still stands as the #1 best-selling comic on an indie level. And I believe still holds the Guinness World Record for most comics published by an indie creator and company. Also, Spawn has 2 mainstream adaptations that I am aware of. It has the animated series that premiered on HBO from 1997 to 1999 on HBO. I'll talk about that a little bit. And then also it has the live action adaptation, which released in 1997. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit of background of Spawn, what's going on with Todd McFarlane at this point, and why I feel that his participation in bringing Spawn to life once again, live action or even animated, but on a bigger scale in a contemporary time period, is so important, and why I think it could work, and there is a base for it, a fan base that is. So originally Spawn #1 that is, was released in May of 1992 and sold over 1.7 million copies, and as of the year 2007, and so we're 18 years removed from that, I'm sure it's a lot more now, it remains a record for an independent comic book, as I referenced a couple moments ago. And as I stated earlier, on a side note, Todd McFarlane is the sole creator of Spawn. It's his creation 100%, but he really did step back even in the early issues as the main artist and creator when it comes to writing for it. Even by the mid to late 90s, he was no longer solely writing Spawn and or even doing the artwork. Multiple collaborative artists were coming in to do the work for him as he did look over the project. And that was through Todd McFarlane Productions. He owns the rights to Spawn. I do believe at this point in time he is sharing the rights with Warner Brothers, and that's who is responsible for the release of the animated show that did come out in 1994. So let's talk about that a bit. So categorized as a gothic neo-noir, Spawn, Todd McFarlane's Spawn that is, premiered on HBO in 1997, May 16th to be specific, and it ran from May 16th, 1997 to May 28th, 1999. So there was 2 years of Spawn, and there were 18 episodes in total, 3 seasons. This was a very successful show, actually won an Emmy, and I actually remember it. Definitely it wasn't a kid's show, but I do remember bits and pieces of it, and I actually recently rewatched it again because it is on Max, so I went back and I watched, I think, the majority of it. I don't know if I watched every season, but I definitely watched at least 5 to 6 episodes, and it really brought back a lot of that 90s nostalgia that I remember from the animated Spawn. That was really the first adaptation that we got off the print of Spawn, and I thought overall it was a very well done animated series, and I believe this is the real way to bring Spawn back. Obviously, we'll talk about live action, but I think the animated way is the way to do it. Get people interested in the character again. It also gives Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema a chance to do analytics. Like, what do people want to see? Are people so interested in Spawn? What type of Spawn iteration are they interested in? Because there are different iterations of Spawn at this point. Also, I feel it would be cost friendly. It would cost money to get this done. You'd have to bring in writers. Also, Todd McFarlane's going to have to come back in. He's going to be there. I think it'd be very important to have his presence there. And then you got to have the artists as well putting all this together. But I feel like this would be the best way to go about seeing if Spawn is viable to be put on the big screen again. If you ask me, this series was the trailblazer for animated series that were targeted towards an adult audience. And at this point in time, even looking back, I'd probably call it a time capsule project, something that you could do now, but I think animated gives you the chance to really take it there. And also, like I said, you're testing your audience. A lot of the content that was shown in that Spawn TV series was definitely dark stuff, not for everybody. It's niche, and you got to have an appreciation for Spawn, Todd McFarlane, and what they're doing with the story. But if you do have an appreciation for it, it's something that you will definitely get into and like. And as I noted earlier, with the Predator Killer of Killers that just released on Hulu right now, it really just made me think, this is a piece that adds to Predator lore, also live action Predator as well, and it builds into what you're going to see in Predator Badlands that comes out in November. I would love to see the numbers behind how Predator Killer of Killers is doing. And then also that would let me know, is an animated way to bring a live action adaptation down into a different area for the viewer. Maybe someone that's not familiar with the live action as much, maybe not even like the live action adaptations of Predators, because there are people that don't like them, but maybe give them a different appreciation through animation and also different stories like how they did with this animated series. I feel like Spawn could follow the same suit, and it could be an approach that gets audiences involved with Spawn. Once again, it's been a long time since they've seen him on screen, so it would take some time for them to get readjusted. But yes, Todd McFarlane's Spawn, definitely one of the best animated shows, in my opinion, for adults, arguably top 2 or 3. And at this point, yes, I get it. Predator is definitely a more popular IP than Spawn is. And also, Predator has more iterations out there, live action, and now going into the animated sector, which actually helps Predator's case in the future. And they're expanding lore. So there's a lot to be done there. But I do think if you are going to bring Spawn back, this is actually the way you do it. And by the way, I'm not opposed to actually bringing back Spawn in a theatrical run with an animated version of Spawn himself. You don't even have to make it live action. I actually feel that the animated version would fare better on the big screen than a live action adaptation, unless you get the right cast. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into doing live action films. You have to have the creator there. You have to have the right writers, the right directors, the right actors. And I'll probably talk about that a little later. If I don't talk about it in this broadcast, I'll talk about it in another broadcast. But I wonder what some of you guys out there thinking. If you were to think about Spawn, who would play Spawn now? Would you still cast Jamie Foxx's Spawn? That was the rumor, and I'll talk about that later. Or would you cast someone a little younger so that you could build out a franchise with Spawn potentially? But I do think overall, in my opinion, just as far as risk mitigation goes, live action or animated adaptation of Spawn, doing what you want to do, full creativity, taking it where you want to take it, and also making it as dark as it needs to be. I actually feel like doing it animated and putting it in the big screen would actually make a lot more sense at this point in time. Also, the uniqueness of it. In America, when is the last time that we saw an animated film for adults on the big screen? I can't remember a time. If there is, please let me know down in the comments. And so now let's talk about a film that I know a lot of Spawn fans remember from New Line Cinema, the 1997 live adaptation of Spawn. So while the film did get harsh reviews, the box office was modest. It earned $54 million domestically and $33 million on top of that global against the $40 million budget. There was use of CG, of course. That was a gripe of a lot of people, the visuals of it. And there was some practical as well. The suit, for the most part, was practical, but the cape was CG, and more than likely they'd have to CG the cape now as well. But I'd actually say if they're going to bring back Spawn live action, actually have the cape be practical, have it be real, but throw VFX over it, and that would help with the visuals a ton, because if you're familiar with Spawn, he really uses the cape. It's almost alive, and so very tough to do, even with practical sense and even VFX. It has to look a certain way, and I think that's one thing people couldn't get past when they saw that. Also, I thought the story was pretty solid when it comes to the Spawn film. It's one of those 90s nostalgic films where you don't really grade it that hard. You're just in for a good time. It's a popcorn flick, to be honest. Could it have been better? Sure. Could it have been better acting, better shot, better well planned? Of course. No movie is really perfect in that sense, but overall, it was a good time if you liked Spawn. And I also think outside of behind the scenes stuff going on as far as Todd McFarlane and the IP, everything going on with who owns it, who can do what with it, and just trying to create a new Spawn film, writing, all things that go on behind the scenes, I feel like the studio at this point in time, and it would be Warner Brothers who would be funding this fully, I think they're just kind of trying to figure out how to approach this what market do they angle this at? Who would be the demographic that they want to target this at? I'd say the demographic for a live action Spawn would probably span from people that are about 30 to 60. And we do know that studios have gotten more hesitant with what they spend money on. If it is any studio that would invest in this, it would be Warner Brothers, though. I've talked about them multiple times on broadcasts. They tend to let the creators create, and they tend to fund projects, whether or not the projects make the money they expect. They've continued to do this. There's been talk of them kind of tightening their belt, but we haven't seen it yet, and Warner Brothers has had a good year. But to get back to the point, there was a Spawn film planned in 2008. For those who didn't know, and that fell to the wayside for 9 years, then in July of 2017, Blumhouse, which would be Universal at this point, announced that Todd McFarlane would come in and direct King Spawn. That's what's going on right now in the comic book world. You have the King Spawn iterations. McFarlane would go on to write the script, and then in May of 2018, it was announced that actor Jamie Foxx would portray the character of Albert Simmons, aka Spawn. In July of 18, Jeremy Renner had signed on to play Detective Twitch. Very familiar names if you are into Spawn, not only through the comics, but that animated adaptation that I talked about. Obviously, Spawn, the main piece, and then Twitch, the detective there as well, who worked at the office with all the other officers. I've actually talked about, too, if you're going to do a live action Spawn at this point, I think Spawn should be like omnipresent. Not necessarily that he's on screen in a big way all the time, but you actually focus the film on the cops and or corrupt cops or just crime in the city. Also, like the Predator anthology, I think what it does is it gives you a connection with the human element, and then you have Spawn show up, and that's the cherry on top. You could have Spawn, in a sense, be the boogeyman of the film or be the mass murderer that they just cannot find, and he's really cleaning up the city before they can even get to it and cleaning up the corruption as well. So then it becomes a crime thriller that's a gothic noir with Spawn as the boogeyman. That would be great, and maybe I should write a Spawn film and pitch it. But anyway, back to what was being said. So they said the filming was going to begin in June of 2019. That got delayed to a later date. In August 2021, it was reported that Broken City screenwriter Brian Tucker had been hired to rewrite McFarlane's screenplay. So not only do we have multiple pushbacks as far as when the film is going to start shooting, but we had the screenplay rewritten in totality. Now, the reasons behind that, I'll do more research on why they did that, but very interesting. Perhaps he just wanted to add to McFarlane's screenplay and or change the direction. In October of 2022, The Hollywood Reporter stated that Scott Silver, Malcolm Spellum, and Matthew Mixon had been hired to pen a new draft on the screenplay. So that'd be the third rewrite, I guess you'd say, and that Renner's continued involvement depended on the new draft's outcome. McFarlane expressed doubts about directing the film himself. And as we are speaking now, ladies and gents, the live-action adaptation of Spawn is in limbo. Now, in November of 2021, McFarlane launched a dedicated television development and production arm of his McFarlane Films, which has signed a first-look deal with production company WIP, which is WIIP, as of November 21. The company has 3 shows in development: a Spawn spinoff, Sam and Twitch, the stop-motion animated event series McFarlane, and a live-action adaptation of another project not associated with Spawn at all. And so that's where we're at, ladies and gents. I basically covered the genesis of Spawn, gave you some background on the character. I talked about the animated series that was on HBO in the 90s, and then talked about the live-action adaptation that we had in the 90s as well. That was 97 when that released. So there was a big, heavy push for Spawn content in the late 90s. That was the height of the popularity that you could see at that point in time on both ends, comic book world and the world of entertainment in all facets. And so with all that being said, as we spoke on, it seems like Spawn is just in limbo. It seems like no one knows what to do with it. No one seems to want to take the chance on it. But that doesn't mean that there isn't opportunity there, and I think eventually something is going to have to give. I just hope it happens when Todd McFarlane can still be around and be able to be hands-on in the process. You definitely want the creator there to steer the direction. He doesn't have to write the screenplay, doesn't even have to direct, but if he can be there to steer the direction, I think that would be a good start. I do know that McFarlane, he does have a lot of things going on with his toy company, which has been highly successful. I think he was into trading cards as well. That guy is into a bunch of stuff and he's making a lot of money in different areas. So that could be something too, to where it just keeps getting pushed back. And it's like, okay, do I want to stop what I'm doing there? It's making me money. If I go and do this, it's a lot more headache at this point. I'm older in age. I have to deal with the studio system and or another company telling me what to do with my product that they might have some rights of. And so it might be a headache that he just doesn't even want to deal with at this point because he's on coast mode. But who knows? That's kind of just speculation. But with all that being said, I do feel there is a niche fan base, including myself, that would love to see Spawn make a return on a screen near you. Overall, ladies and gents, I want to know what you think about this topic. Did you enjoy this topic? Please comment down below. Would you like to see Spawn make a return, animated or live action? And what direction would you go in with it? Would you go with the classic Spawn stories? Would you go with King Spawn? I do know there's a lot of different directions that they could go in with that, so I want to hear everybody else's thoughts on that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share this video with a couple of friends and colleagues. Please let them know to subscribe as well. Like this video as well. Helps out with the video, helps out with the channel. And ring the bell for notifications on more updates on anything that I decide to speak on. I think these are enjoyable conversations and conversations that get thought going. So please ring the bell for notifications and subscribe to the channel. Be safe. It's Neff signing off.